Just a couple of miles from the Capitol, there is another building that represents some of Oklahoma's rich history, the Calvary Baptist Church. The structure is a symbol of the spiritual, cultural, and civil rights history of Black Oklahomans. In recent years, the building has suffered serious water damage and appeared on the verge of falling apart. But that may be about to change.
The congregation that made up the Calvary Baptist Church met in various locations in the area that became known as the Deep Deuce before building their church in 1923. The Oklahoma Civil Rights Movement was organized inside Calvary in the late 1950s. Spencer Ledbetter pastored there from 1990 through 1992.
It was a rallying place for so many things, sit-ins and things that happened in the civil rights era with Clara Luper and many others in Oklahoma over the years. So this was one of the first, if not the major spot for gatherings at that time.
The church also played a role in the future of the man who eventually led the nation's civil rights movement.
And it seems that I can hear God saying to America, "You are too arrogant."
Anita Arnold is executive director of the Black Liberated Arts Council.
It was also the beginning of the selection process for the new minister that eliminated Dr. Martin Luther King.
Dr. King applied for the job of pastor in 1953, but was judged to be too young for the job. The year before, the NAACP held its national convention at Calvary. Among those attending, Thurgood Marshall, later a justice on the U.S. Supreme Court, labor leader Walter Reuther, and Senator Hubert Humphrey. It is said that before the church was built, the nation's first civil rights leader, Booker T. Washington, paid a visit to the congregation. But time changed things. With the end of segregation, the black community spread out beyond the Deep Deuce, eventually sending the entire area along Northeast 2nd Street into decline, including Calvary's congregation.
At that point, it had gone down to a very few, maybe about 20 or so, 20, 25. It was very few, an elderly congregation at that time. It had just gone through so many battles and so many different things for so many years. It had just diminished to that point.
The church's iconic sign is now gone. Anita Arnold says it was sold along with the original pipe organ. That cut deep for the black community. But the future of Calvary Baptist is now in new hands. Dan Davis was looking for a place to expand his law practice when he and his wife Joy learned of the Calvary Baptist Church and decided to take a look.
I had no idea it was here for sale. And so as soon as we walked in that day, I'll never forget, we walked into the sanctuary and go, this is unbelievable. It really is. And it's unbelievable.
Steals your heart.
Even in its water-damaged condition, the sanctuary's prior glory is clear to see. 2 stories high with a balcony that wraps around it. Stained glass windows surround the room, and high above where the congregation would sit is a stained glass skylight, now partially covered by the botched roof repair that is blamed for much of the water damage. The Davises paid $700,000 for the building, and they face a bill of up to $1.5 million more for repairs and renovation. They say it's worth it because this building will be more than just a law office.
We're sobered by the responsibility we have for the building because we know how much the building means to the community and for so many years, and we want to preserve that and make it functional and bring it back to the glory that it had back in the 1920s and 1930s. That's what the objective is.
The church is on the National Registry of Historic Places, and like so many other downtown buildings, it suffered major damage from the Oklahoma City bombing. With federal funding, the stained glass windows were repaired in the late 90s, something that helps construction project manager J.W. Peters contain the cost of this renovation.
And there are only 3 windows that are going to have to be repaired. Everything else right now is in great shape. There are a couple small cracks that are going to be repaired in place, but we're actually only going to have to pull 3 of the original windows and have those repaired.
First on the list of repairs, ripping off the old roof to get to all that water damage while ensuring the integrity of the stained glass skylight.
So in doing so, we have to build a protective enclosure around that to be able to make sure that it stays the way that it needs to, pull the roof off and re-roof it. But yeah, that's something that we're a little nervous about, but we'll get through it.
2 architects are on the project. Omar Curry says his firm has a special attachment to this renovation.
My partner at Moda Architecture is Chong Branson. Actually, Clara Luper
was his teacher at John Marshall High School when he attended. We came over here and we talked, and all these memories just flooded back, to his system because it's all connected to Clara Luper.
Curry says the plan is to maintain the sanctuary as the heart of the building while turning the balcony into a working office.
What we'll have is hallways on the perimeter of the building that are offset from the offices that the owner is going to occupy by glass partition. And so that if you're in the sanctuary, you're looking up and you're not blocking the stained glass windows.
Catherine Montgomery is the historic preservation architect. Her specialty is helping people who use tax credits to preserve historical places.
It makes a big difference in making these kinds of projects possible. I'm afraid that if we didn't have that tax credit, then this building is like others where it would end up being demolished.
The legislature has included the historical preservation tax credit on the list of those that could be eliminated to finance a cut in income taxes. Montgomery says a restoration like this is more than just preserving history.
There's a few tears because you think back and you reminisce on things, but when you see it as a new space, then that excites you and helps you feel that there is confidence in the future.
Black Incorporated's Anita Arnold already feels that new hope.
But the future looks bright. It really does at this point. I might not have said that a year ago, but I do today.
Dan Davis hopes to move into his new office space by early next year. The Davises plan to use the sanctuary for exhibits highlighting the history of the church and for other events that fit the nature and history of Calvary Baptist and the Deep Deuce.